Welcome to the Sports Card Lessons Podcast. I'm your host, Big Ken. Whether you're watching on YouTube or listening on a streaming service, please like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. You'll be notified whenever I drop any new content. Or if I drop content early, like this week, you're getting this episode a day early this week. Welcome. Thanks for being here. Really excited for this episode today. It was a collaboration with Craig and Carmine from Crosstown Cardboard Podcast. We spent the weekend together at Culture Collision down in Atlanta, and we talked about just getting together and doing an episode. So we came up with this idea, as you can already tell by the topic, does traveling to shows make sense? CENTS, and you'll hear all about that for the next hour. So I hope you enjoy the episode. I will be back Sunday, Super Bowl Sunday. It's going to be an early episode because my Chiefs are in there in that Super Bowl. We have a little house party going on. We're going to have people over, so I'm going to get this episode out early Sunday morning. So you'll be getting that one a little early as well. Saturday this weekend, I am going to be setting up at the Garden State show in Secaucus, New Jersey. The last show, I'll be there Saturday. So if you're in that area and you're out and about, definitely come down, say hello, make some deals. That is where I will be. So again, without further ado, I hope you enjoy this episode. Here we go.
Welcome to Crosstown Cardboard episode 74. The title is Does Traveling to Shows Make Sense? And that's sense as in dollars, because this is all about our financials of setting up as dealers at Culture Collision. And we were trying to come out with 3 episodes in 1 week. That proved to be a big task, but we've rescheduled with Big Ken. That's our guest today. He's at sportscard_lessons. And of course, I'm Carmine at Carmine's Cards. We have Craig at New York City Sports Cards. And we're going to get into, does it really make sense to travel to these shows like all 3 of us set up at recently at Culture Collision? We were supposed to come out with the 3rd episode on Saturday. We had to reschedule. We posted that on the podcast, on our Instagrams, all about the podcast. Not that anybody's devastated. We know life goes on, but we did promise a Saturday episode. Didn't meet that promise. So we wanted to let people know. But here we are. Big Ken, Craig, myself. And Craig, how should we introduce our big guest for this episode?
Big guest is he's got a big heart. That's our guy right there, Big Ken. Ken, you're pretty well traveled at this point, I would say. You not only your local shows, but you set up a Culture Collision. Burbank, did you go to?
No, not yet.
Carmine,
Not
you
yet.
did. But point is, I think you went to a show at Fenway recently.
Yep.
Right? Up in Boston. So going to these shows is expenses, right? Hotels, all that. We're going to get into that. But we just set up together in Atlanta, and whatever it costs, first and foremost, we have so much fun. So
Right.
that factors into the cost as well. But Ken, you are one that you prefer to set up as opposed to walk shows.
I do. Lately, I've been walking, more shows, but I do, and I like the protection of a table. I like the refuge, to be able to, when the show gets busy, I like to be able to get behind the table, and have that distance between me and the crowd and put my cards out there. But, you noticed when we were set up, when it was slow, I was out, running, like we all were out running around. But when it gets busy, I want to be at the table. But I do like the setup. I do like to have a table there. I feel like, whether I'm buying or selling, I feel like I've paid for my place, at this show. And I see a lot of people that show up and do a lot of side deals and stuff, and I'm not knocking it because I do the same thing. But I feel myself, when I pay for the table, I feel I paid for my place at the show.
Right. Right. So, Big Ken, before we get any further, can you tell Craig and I the nicknames that you have given us in return, please?
Well, we're going right to the nicknames. I like that.
This is what the people want to know.
Yeah, well, we got Carmine being the sports broadcaster. He's big news, right? And we got Craig hailing from New York City, right? You say on Long Island, but you are New York City sports cards, so we got to call you Big City. And you got Big Ken right here in the middle.
That's great. That's great. And like you said, Craig, we had so much fun, all setting up together and knowing each other for, at least over a year now, that or a couple of years almost. So it's just great. I mean, you can't pay for that amount of fun. So like you said, that has to be factored in. But Ken, where would you rank? Like, was it worth it for you to go to Culture Collision, travel from, the Northeast to Atlanta and set up as a dealer? Did it turn out to be worth it financially?
Well, let's put it this way. When you asked two questions in one right there, you said, was it worth it? And then you add the financial part on the back.
No, only finance. I'm sorry. I'm big news. I'm already not living up to my nickname. I just meant the last part, financially. I know it's worth it as far as like a fun time and cards and the hobby part.
Yeah. Yes. And it's there's so many positives in going at that show. I probably sold, now didn't profit, but I probably sold enough to cover all my expenses. But as you know, Big Ken made a big deal on Instagram on Saturday, which, if I included that into the weekend, the whole weekend was paid for. Right. And I think that's one thing about the hobby. You can't judge just by a single show. You can't say, well, I went to this Culture Collision show. Was it worth it? Well, who knows? You may have made a contact at Culture Collision that a week later somebody call you and say, hey, you had that card. Like, so you don't know. Like, you can't walk away from a show. And I hear people all the time say, worst show ever. I'm never doing the show again. This was a horrible show. Right. And I shake my head because you can't judge in that if it's a 1-day show and it's 8 hours or 9, you can't judge what happens because the people you meet, the connections you meet. And I took a picture on Friday of my table set up, right, from a distance, probably 6-8 feet away, posted on Instagram. Hey, I'm here. Come make some deals. Somebody saw a card in my case. They had to have zoomed in to find that card in my case and contacted me. And Saturday we made a deal. So if you could say, Ken, if you didn't go to Culture Collision, you could have still sold that card and made all that money, but I would have never posted that picture up, and that person saw the picture and at that moment made it, so there's so many things that go into it. You can't judge. You can't, to me, I just can't value a show at the end of the day when I count my money out and say, was this worth it or not? Down the road, I may be able to say, well, maybe a few of those shows, maybe I don't need to do them again. But other shows, I say I'd do them every weekend if I could.
Yeah, you stole my exact thought. And the card you're talking about, by the way, was the employee exclusive PMG of Hulk Hogan. Yep. So, yeah, valid point. Sure, you made the sale on Instagram, but if you weren't set up, like you said, took a picture of your showcase, maybe that sale doesn't happen. Probably doesn't.
And I'm saying that, and as I'm sitting here going through it, I almost thought to myself, it's possible somebody walked by and saw the card too and messaged their friend, because we do that a lot, right? You see, like if like I'm a Trinity Rodman person. If you went somewhere and you saw a big tree, you would take a picture of it and send it to me. Right. And I may reach straight out to that person. So a lot of that happens at these shows too, right? Somebody comes up, sees a card in your case. They may take a picture. Somebody else may contact you the next day, a week later, it's a few days, you never know. That's the great thing about this hobby. It's like a web, right? And everybody's connected somehow.
Yep. Totally. 100%. So I'm really, we kind of got our numbers out. And no doubt. I mean, I totally agree that it's worth it with, the friendships, the connections, even the learning, like the sales or future connections. Like even Ken, you mentioned on your podcast, Sports Card Lessons, one of our favorites, clearly, along with Cousins Collectibles. But with you mentioning that just by happenstance, the table next to where we were set up had Trinity Rodman, one of your PC, soccer stars. And you walk around, you see all these cards in one room that it's not like you got to go through people's Instagram stories and hope that it's like a conveyor belt of, cards that you can quickly see. Okay, I like that. I don't like that. Like, would I have picked up the Macaulay Culkin and Joe Pesci dual auto if I didn't just see it in that case and know I had an opportunity to trade for it? So like the reshuffling of your inventory or your PC, there's a million. I don't even know if you can measure how many more opportunities there are to make deals, find new interests, find cool cards at a show compared to not attending shows like that.
Yeah. And then don't forget the trade night, right? Then you go to trade nights and there's all these other deals happening in a hotel lobby at, for me at 10 o'clock at night, but for you at 3:30 in the morning,
Yeah. And you can just approach somebody like I was mentioning, Merle World Cards with, good buddies with Dan, the great curator. Where else am I going to get the opportunity to say, hey, I heard the great curator talking about on Cousins Collectibles how he got you into photos, and then you kind of took that and ran with it with these Type 1 photos. And can you break down for me the differences with the types of photos, why some are worth more, how old they are? We talked for like 45 minutes and he basically schooled me on the whole tangent niche of photos that I had no idea about, really at all. I knew Type 1 was the oldest, and the most desirable, but other than that, I couldn't tell you anything else. And I got to get that education, that learning part of being worth it to travel to a big show like that, when that would have been an impossible scenario otherwise. So,
yeah. And I think just being out there and having your finger on the pulse of what's going on, like, you get it. We all know, like, people will start coming up to the table and asking for the same player. Like, all of a sudden you start to see that at shows, like people asking for certain players or asking for certain things, or see people picking up a lot of the same stuff. And I start to say, okay, little light bulbs are going off. I see what's going on. Like a player that is starting to get hot, or people are starting to ask about. Like, we always say, if somebody says start collecting somebody, it's too late, right? So this is where, like, I start to get a lot of these ideas, because I'm just listening to what other people are saying, and I'm listening to what they're asking for, and I don't think you get that kind of insider information by being on Instagram and Facebook and things like that. I really think you need to be at the shows, talking with people and interacting with people to get that kind of information.
Yeah.
Human capital, as we always talk about.
Human capital.
Ken, go on.
No, I was just curious what your numbers are as far as like your cost, your travel, because you guys had to fly to Culture Collision, and I got to drive 2.5 hours. So that's also a difference, flying real far to a destination show, traveling a decent amount, and then traveling next door 15 minutes down the road.
I'm probably not the best example for Culture Collision because flights were paid for with points. And my father-in-law lives in Atlanta, so I had a place to stay. But even so, I accounted for flights. No, sorry, not flights, because flights was points. Table fee, had to buy the showcase, Ubers here and there, and even so, we're talking $353.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah. So factor in, if there was hotel for a couple nights and flights, we're talking probably another $500, so $700-800. You factor that in, is that worth it for you? And I think I like talking about the numbers, and the fact that we talk about the numbers on here actually came back to bite me in the ass on the deal today, which we have to talk about. We have to mention on the end of the show.
Are you going to start censoring yourself now?
I don't know. I'm true to myself, so Here we
That's
are. But
always
anyway,
the thing you have to worry about. You start
I
talking
know.
about your numbers, and then
I
you
know.
try to make a
Oh,
deal, and people are like, the listeners are like, no. I know you only paid 200 for that card, and you're like, oh boy, here we go.
It was a good story, but we'll save that for later. But anyway, you consider if I had to pay for those things, right?
Yeah.
$800 all in.
oof.
Now, I like talking about this because I think we represent the average person who doesn't really do this full time, but like they want to try something different, go to a new show. What's it going to cost them? For me, if it were to cost, I had to pay all that. Yeah, when I factor in the sales that I made, that hopefully covers half of that. Not to mention, like you said, the education you get from just being there. And I think if you're someone that transacts the way we do, just closing a deal, big or small, buy, sell, trade, doesn't matter. It's a rush, right? I think that's why we all like this, right?
Right.
Yeah.
No,
The fact that you are agreeing on a financial cost with another stranger and you're connecting over something like is pretty cool. And the fact that I was able to close 28 deals in 2 days, that's a lot of, excitement. So yeah, easily worth the cost for me. And we got to see Luka drop 73.
Yes, that was definitely worth the cost of, what was that, $45?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
That was our cheapest thing all show. That was cheaper than a big steak dinner with Big Ken. I'll tell you that much. Well, what did that run us, Kenny, a piece? Like 75, 85, 100?
Yeah. Probably would
Oh, we
tip
got-
around 100 each. Yeah, well, it was worth it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I had
But,
that for breakfast the next day.
These are the things too that we don't talk about going to shows, because you want to go to the bar and have a couple drinks, right? Nobody's adding that to the bottom line. You want to go to the restaurant and say, hey, let's treat ourselves to a nice steak dinner, like something like that. Those are the things, like, I don't put that on. And then there's some surprises. When I got to the airport, I had to Uber back and forth, and it was like $48 each way from the airport to the hotel. But once I got to the hotel, I didn't have to go anywhere, right? Yeah, that was it. It was two Uber trips versus you go fly somewhere else to a hotel and you got to Uber back and forth to the venue. So I think that stuff kind of evens itself up. I mean, for me, with airfare and the hotel was, right around $600, I think. And then what did you say? 150 something for the table, and the badges. So I'm at what, 750, another $100 for Ubering, 850. So you figure like, $900, $1,000, for something like that. Now, if this was truly, and I'm going to say truly a business, and it is a business for all intent and purposes, but if we were really looking, at the bottom lines to this, you would say, look, every card I sold, I mean, I've seen that notebook in your pen there. I see you writing, and I know when you're selling cards, you're writing, this is what I paid for them. This is, so when you're selling a card, yeah. So say you sell a card for $50, you have to go in and figure out, was $12 my profit on that, was $14. And if you sell a card for 300, was, what was my profit on that? $30, right? Something like that. Well, that's what you would have to calculate your profit from those cards, and that would have to equal up to the $1,200 or $1,300. So you really need to be selling an awful lot of cards, or some big cards with a lot of room, with a lot of profit built into it. So now we say, okay, for me, there's an entertainment expense, right? So
Right.
I do things that I don't say I'm going to take that out, because it's like when I go to a movie, right? I go to the movie theater and I have some popcorn and I watch a movie. I leave. I don't say, like, I left with nothing. This was a terrible thing. No, I mean, I paid for that entertainment. And that's the same with going to a show. Some of this is in entertainment purposes. Like, I love the hobby and I love going there, but I kind of like traveling too. So I got to go to Atlanta. I'd never been to Atlanta before. So I got to go there. I got to meet people that I knew were going to be there that said, hey, I'm going to come see you, and other people who just came to the table. So that's a whole entertainment part of it too. So I will never sit there with my pen and paper and say, yes, I profited from this and I didn't. I like to go to these shows and I'm selling cards, right? And the money just keeps dropping back in. I just keep rotating it back into the hobby, whether it's into my PC or it's more inventory. Lately I've been doing some trading and getting some cards and some cash for a bigger card, like just things like that. Just, making different moves in the hobby, and it's working. I'm never reaching into my pocket, to say, oh, I need to fund something because there's hobby money available for that. But on the other hand, I'm also reaching in my pocket because I'm putting out more for some entertainment. If I'm going out for a nice meal, I would do that at home. I would do that Saturday night at home. I would go out for a nice steak dinner, right? So why am I going to put that on the trip? Like, I need to make this money back out of cards. No, I don't, because I would be doing that anyways, whether I'm on the road hobbying or I'm home, here at home.
Well said. Listen, going to a card show is like going on vacation. Listen, I love going to the beach more than anyone. Nothing I'd rather be on like a island somewhere with my wife on the beach. But what is a vacation? At the end of the day, it's an escape from reality, right? So you're paying for a vacation, basically. Hang with your friends, playing with cards. You're paying for a vacation just like you would pay for a vacation to the beach.
It's definitely a hobby vacation. And by the way, Craig, if you took a vacation to an island, you would find a card shop there because you've done that before.
Hawaii, my honeymoon. I seeked out 2 different card opportunities. That's how we roll.
Yeah, and I love what you said.
Shout
Ken,
out to my
about
wife. I know she's not listening.
She gave you 45 minutes in the card store, right?
Worth it.
I mean, that's the hobby symbiosis you need. Every big person in the hobby had a big woman to support them. I think that's fair to say. All right, so we got no comment from the fellas here. Okay, so the entertainment expense, like what I was saying, with that is so spot on, because the whole thing, with the hobby, like, I want to have as much entertainment as possible, as long as you're not losing your shirt over the hobby and you're financially responsible, like how you're in it, how much money, like you said, Ken, you're not taking personal money or money you need to live and using that for cards. Like the person who made our Culture Collision honorable mention team, the unfortunate gambler who needed money out of Craig, and he gladly gave him 30% comps. No, just kidding. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. But that's huge. And I think also when you travel to a card show and you set up as a dealer, you have so many interactions with people that you get like a decent feel for the city. Like you were saying, you never went to Atlanta before, but how many people from the Atlanta area probably came up to our table and we got into conversations with them. We got a feel for and I felt like I met so many Atlanta people compared to like if I took a trip to Atlanta and saw some sights also.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. That you got more conversation, more out of more people FaceTime. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Than normally you would have, because even if you go out, like sometimes I'm going to these shows and I'm by myself, and if I go, I say, okay, I'm gonna go say to a bar and eat dinner or whatever on a Saturday night, on the weekend I'm away at a show, I'll just start talking to whoever I can around me, just to get just some people time in, like, just find out, the people, who you are and where you're from. And sometimes they're local, sometimes they're traveling. But yeah, I mean, sometimes I think that's like half the fun of getting out and traveling and going, even if it's not to these shows, just to those areas and going out and seeing. And like Craig said, like, just like being on vacation. Like, even when I go on vacation, I strangely find a lot of people to talk to.
Mm-hmm. And you get to include things like, Ken, we were mentioning the steak dinner, and then, walking around downtown a little bit and going to the Hawks game with Craig. Like, you get to do things that you wouldn't normally, be able to do. And the connection piece too. Like, we were mentioning this card that I got, the Willis Reed, the captain inscription on the first year notable nicknames. Now I have a connection with Jeff's cards, a New York City legend in the card game.
Saw him today.
You saw him today. Okay.
We talked about that very card.
Really? What did you guys say?
We were just talking about the deal. He didn't realize how much I liked that card as well, but he was set up today at the Bleecker Trading event.
Okay.
But I told him, listen, I'm happy if it's anyone's collection, it's with you.
Yeah. Thanks, bro. It was
Let's see it. Put it up nice and close.
You want to see it again?
Willis Reed, the captain. That's the notable nicknames. 2010 National Treasures.
Yep.
Right?
Yep. And it's numbered at a 99, but really they hardly ever come up. I mean, People really
did you
collect
snatch
these.
this card away from Craig? Do I feel some?
No,
some
I had my
friction?
chance at the show. I laid my eyes on it, and I could have made a play, and I didn't.
Yeah.
He who hesitates is lost.
Yeah.
It's created a Crosstown Cardboard controversy, and we're trying to mend the fence. Actually, if we have to admit, that's why we had to push the episode back a few days, because me and Craig had the controversy, very public. No, I'm just kidding. No, we were completely fine. It was a scheduling. It was a conflict, not a controversy.
Yeah.
But I totally agree. I mean, that connection with Jeff's cards. Now I know what his showcase looks like. I already made a deal with them. And Craig, like you said, putting the money out there, exchanging money with somebody, that's like one of the quickest ways to make a strong-ish connection, or at least, you have enough trust in the other person. And now I can message him at any time, and he's, swiping up on my stories with the fire emoji, and now we're like going back and forth. And I know he has cool stuff. So just finding, literally that one person that now I can go to and say, like, what do you have, or do you still have this? Because I was interested in a few of his other cards. Yeah. And so to have a supply of somebody with cool cards, like Ken with that Trinity Rodman, and Craig, I'm sure you met some people there too, as far as soccer cards that you picked up. Now you have connections that you really can't measure with cost.
One thing I'm just going to jump in. One thing I want to say about Jeff is he's so easy to make a deal with. Yeah. That's the best thing. Like, I've made deals with Jeff before. So easy, and it's not high pressure. It's not everybody looking to try to get $1 or $3 or $5. It's offer, counter offer, and right. maybe one more piece of conversation, but the deal is done. There's a handshake there, and that's one of the reasons I see Jeff at a lot of the shows, and I've made deals with him before. And when I look in his case and I see something I really like, and I made a deal with him at this last show, I bought a card from him. And I just know it's when I look in it, I see a card in his case I just know it's going to be a real super easy deal. Yeah.
Yeah. 100%. And me and Craig were talking about this too. Ken, I'm interested to see what you think about it, because we were like, and you have cards like this too, that you feel honored when somebody buys it out of your showcase because it encapsulates your style or what you also like. So you're sharing what you like with somebody. But see what you think about this, because me and Craig made a few deals like this, but also with Jeff, he has cards that's my cat. That's the big cat. That's the big cat with a K. Sorry.
Top cat.
So yeah. So when you look into Jeff's showcase, you find something that you really like. Like, it's not like, ultra modern football or things that they're a dime a dozen. If you collect that, great, and that's what you like, that's awesome. But you see the unique level of stuff, like in somebody like Jeff's showcase, or hopefully in ours as well, when we were set up, that you want to actually really be motivated. And he's also an extremely easy guy to deal with and very honest, but you're very motivated to get that card because the person has something that you really like that is unique, like this. So you're like, oh, I got to get that. That's cool.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know Jeff is another guy that does women's sports. Right. So that's why I like to go. I know when I see him, I'm going to see some women, some women athletes in his case. And I'm pretty sure definitely, I know the card I bought from him at Culture Collision was Brittany Griner. It was the Olympic pedigree card, which they're autoed. Now they're numbered to 25, and I probably have 8 of them already because I keep finding them at different shows. It's one of those things, I just keep finding them and sending them off to grading, right? So maybe I probably own, close to half of those cards out there. Maybe it's saying that people just don't want them, but I'm excited to own those, right? So, and I know, I bought some women's soccer cards from him too. So I just know he has, for someone like me who I PC a lot of the women's stuff, he's just a guy that I when I see him, I get excited. I want to see what he's got in his case. And then he's got all that pop culture stuff too, which is kind of cool. So, and I think that's what you're getting at. And I'm just confirming that is he's got such a great variety of stuff. And if you're into that kind of stuff, it's always fun to window shop.
Now, Jeff's got a lot of cool stuff, and we see Jeff at shows. But I think the benefit to all this, we're talking back to the theme of travel and the shows. The benefit is you just get exposure to different stuff. I love my local card shops. A lot of my shops, the shows, the local ones, you see a lot of the same vendors, the same cards. So you're just paying for the opportunity to get your eyes on different stuff. Is it worth it to go to National? I don't know about you all. Last year and this year, I booked my tickets, locked in for Cleveland. I usually go for 2 nights. So 2 hotel nights, flights, tickets to the show. Cost me about $550 total. Now, Carmine, if you remember, I made that Jude Bellingham flip.
Yep.
Bought it for 500, sold it for 1,000. There's my trip right there. Even without that, though, again, the cost of that versus the type of stuff that you'll see, that's where I got a lot of my good Knicks PC cards that I'm not going to find at my local card shop. So again, does it make sense? Yes, because you're going to see a whole bunch of stuff that you don't normally see. And I can't wait for Cleveland this year.
Yeah. That stuff. That's what we always talk about, the stuff. I mean,
stuff.
And,
stuff.
I don't know if you guys do this too, but sometimes I just go, you got like last year for the National, Chicago's coming up. Sometimes you go into the, your PC or your showcase, and you kind of look through your cards and you say, you know what, I think it's time I can move this card, and I'll take a card and I'll sell it, and it'll provide me the capital to pay for a trip like that. Where I could say, okay, it's my card money paying for and then I go out there, I turn a profit out there, and I can go, and in one way, I'm turning that card into another card, but I'm using it to pay for the trip before I actually go out and remake the money back, so things like that too.
Yeah. I definitely agree with the exposure, like at the National you were mentioning, Craig. The exposure to these cards, like this is the one that I came away with from National, the Larry Bird Flawless 1/1 patch auto. And then I also had the triple auto, the rookie of Bird and Magic, and then Dr. J. And like you said, I would never be able to find those just like and have a chance to make a trade for them if you're not looking at all these showcases and 90 of them I say no to and just walk right past. But those 10 that I end up finding, like at Jeff's cards, like Jordan, who I got this flawless Larry Bird 1/1, or, if you are at a trade night like the one with the Wolf Pack at the National, and I come up on a father and a son who just so happen to have the card that I was trying to get previously of the Bird, Magic, and Dr. J triple autograph, and now I have a chance to sit down, meet them face to face, gain trust, trade with them in a fair way. That not only are you not going to find cards like that you're super interested in online, most likely, but also you're not going to be able to build up the trust to make a 5K or a 3K value trade online unless you already know the person, and you've built that connection. So, and now that can continue. Every time I see Jordan, I automatically have a great thing with him because I got one of the top cards I could possibly get for my own personal collection off him. And now we're just chatting. Oh, do you have any new Larry Birds? What are you collecting? It's great.
Only at National. Now, I don't know about you all. When you guys go to local shows, you drive, right? It's nothing. Hop in the car quick, 15 minutes.
Yep.
See, I don't have that luxury. So if I'm going out to Jersey and I got to get there on my own between the time and the New Jersey Transit, sometimes that's not even worth it for me, given the amount of time it would take me there. So,
right.
If you go to a local show, easy money.
Yeah. I mean, and I'll present my expenses. Good segue, Craig, because as far as the driving, and I wouldn't call this a local show because it's about a 2.5 hour drive, and I'm not factoring the ticket I got on the drive. Which was obviously my own fault, trying to be honest here for the podcast listeners, because this is real life stuff. I'm going to expense that though to the Crosstown Cardboard account. So, Craig, if you have $90, hopefully you can go 50-50, but I didn't count that into my expenses to get there. So it was about $50 of gas, 300-mile round trip, $50. Let's round it off for the Hawks and Dallas Mavericks game to witness Luka drop 73, which we dropped fewer dollars on our ticket than he dropped points. So that's a good value. We didn't even pay $1 per point
because he had a big game.
right? That's a good nickname for Luka. Big
point
game.
scored being more than price of tickets is pretty wild.
Yeah, that's pretty good. That's why they call him Big Game from now on. That's where you heard it here first. So trying to set those trends. So 300 was for the mileage, $50 gas, $50 at the game, $300 for the hotel that me and you split, Ken. And, you got, like Craig got the stay with the in-laws and the points on the flight to cut down those costs. That's a great way to do it. If it makes sense for you, oh, shoot, that was unintentional. But if it makes sense, take those benefits, or if you're traveling, go stay with the family. I mean, that would be a great way if you haven't traveled to a show to go to a show, is if you can stay with the family. Perfect excuse to, get a little alone time or get a little respite, retreat to your bunker as far as, setting up at a table like Ken likes to do. Great excuse, and Craig is the master at that. So that's, a way to save costs, splitting with a roommate. And then I would like to mention, though, that splitting one table 3 ways, like what we did, is a pretty rare situation. Like most of the time, people want at least half a table, a full table. So we were generous, like giving each other space and having one showcase. Because Ken, at your setups, you would easily take up a whole table, I'm sure, if it was your normal.
Well, traveling, now I'm flying, right? So there's only so much you can carry with you. But a local show, I would take up 2 tables because I'd bring all my value boxes and my dollar boxes and cases and all that. Yeah.
Right. So splitting the table 3 ways with 3 dealer badges.
Perfect.
Oh yeah, it was great. It turned out great.
Yeah,
it turned out great. So that was a good, 167 was it, Craig? Split 3 ways for 3 days, staying at one table. Okay. So my total expenses, not factoring in food, which is a big one, but it was $567 to, drive there, stay in a hotel for a few days, set up, go to the Hawks game. And then if we're factoring in food, you got to be close to $700, $750 because that steak dinner, ran us over. But yeah, I mean, that's expensive if you think about it. That money can just go quick. And the $30 breakfast I got at the hotel, that was really good though. But I don't know. Yeah. I haven't figured out if that one was worth it yet. But I mean, that money can be gone in a snap, even if you're driving, $700 to do that. That's not chump change for me.
Yeah.
Look, it's a hobby. People pay for hobbies. You join a league. You want to play pickleball. Maybe you're in an art league or something. I don't know.
An art league.
Whatever your hobby is, you have to pay money to participate in these hobbies. This is really no different.
Yeah.
For us, at least, people who are
travel. People travel for these hobbies that they have hobbies that it doesn't create income, right? There's more hobbies out there that don't create income. This hobby just does for us, creates an income, right?
Yeah, true, right.
And so, I mean, people just put that hobby money out and go do their hobbying thing and with no chance of making money back on it. So this is kind of this is a special hobby where, there's always, trading and buying and selling, a lot of things happening. Yeah. So
ironically, the whole mission of my card club is proving that you can participate in this hobby at little to no cost. Mm-hmm. So that's what they're able to do. I guess, obviously it's different for us.
Yeah,
you definitely can do that. And I think that also your card club kids, Craig, could learn a sports card lesson from Big Ken, because when I was listening to his podcast, the most recent episode, because I want to get his perspective on recapping the trip, because we put out 2 parts of our own perspective. And we're going to, by the time this comes out, we'll have at least one part of the vlog featuring Big Ken in it. And, just recapping.
How's that looking? Good?
It's good. It's looking pretty good, I think. It's around 15 minutes. It's got a bunch of our deals, including our second ever trade that we were able to do. And that was fun. Some pickups, what the show looks like, some play-by-play commentary. Maybe I should get into that. Some sports card commentary if this whole thing doesn't work out. But anyway, that's something that, will be out if you guys want to watch it on YouTube as well. But when I was listening to your podcast, Ken, you moved in silence like lasagna with Lil Wayne. You know, that great line. You were selling stuff out of the value box that I didn't even notice. And then on your podcast, you're like, yeah, I paid for my trip with the value box, you know, cards between $10 and $60, like that Travis Kelce gold I sold while you were, you know, shopping out in the show. And it was $20. I was like, shoot, I would have bought that if I knew about it, you know, numbered
Yeah.
out of 10. So
Yeah.
I know you basically paid for the show based on selling those value box items. What I'm trying to learn for myself is, how do you get the deals to buy those cards to then be able to sell them for a good deal to other people?
So I just hit the local shows. Some of it's ripping. Some of those I've ripped out of boxes, but most of them just came from local shows, and I just buy them in a bunch, right? I'll go up and, you know, a lot of the local shows, they have an 8-foot table, and they have those single cards laid out over the table. So I'll pick up 10, 12, 15 cards and just make a deal on them, right? And then I'll go through and I'll truly comp them, because I kind of know what the values are, and I know what people want. I mean, they want quarterbacks, and if you remember, most of those cards there were the Stroud and the Richardson and the Levis, you know, it's what people were looking for at the show. And these cards, you know, are selling for $40, $50, $60, you know. And then when it got down to the end, there were the $3, the $5, the $10, the $20, like a $20 Kelsey, things like that. But, you know, some of those cards, like, I know it would make sense on those cards to send them out and grade. But
we're pointing because you just made sense, Ken. That's why.
Yeah, I made sense. But if I don't sell them now at $40, $50, or $60, as the market becomes so saturated with those cards, which it already has, because I was at a show today and somebody was selling these cards at $10, $20, $30. And then I kind of pulled my phone out and I'm realizing, yeah, they you know, just on a lot of these cards, like the prices are dropping because the market is so saturated with them. So it would make sense to be grading, you know, to send. And I know a lot of people are sending those out. I'm sending the higher ones out, but the lower end ones, it makes no sense to grade them, because if I can sell them and turn the profit now, and some of them I'm doubling up on the cards, you know.
Right.
So it definitely, and when I said I covered it, it was kind of what I said here. I sold enough of those cards to pay, but if you went to how much profit I had on each one, it wasn't enough, but I had enough. I generated enough income from the show that covered all my expenses.
Okay. Yeah. So,
Can you track everything? Can you track everything, like your
right here?
Okay.
Yeah.
I got you.
You don't actually write it down with all the cards you have, Ken?
You know what? I believe it or not, I was keeping a lot of notes, and I have a good woman at home here who created nice spreadsheets for me and everything. And
Very nice.
I don't have that many cards now, but I do, as talked about, have 180 cards out at PSA. So when those cards come back, I'll have a spreadsheet on those to, you know, start calculating, you know, how that worked out. I did it last year. Last year when I got ready for the national, I just spent from December, January, February, March, and just a little bit of April just buying up football, PSA 10 football, right? And then I marked them all, what I paid for them. I, you know, pulled the marker out and I just wrote them all and I threw them all in the safe. And I just left them there. And then I pulled them all out in July and I, you know, changed out their little covers on it and brought them all to the national. And, you know, I figured out at that point, this was up 30%. This was up 15%. This was down 5%. This didn't go anywhere, like that type of thing. And, you know, realistically selling, right? Where are you selling? Most stuff that nobody's coming up to the table and say, oh, you want $100? Yeah, here's $100. I want the card, because that was that was the comp, right? If it's 100, you're getting $80 for the card, right? It just seems like that seems to be the norm these days. It's, you know, so you can't say, oh, you know, like I bought the card for this, and this is the this is the current comp on it. Well, you're not going to get the current comp. It's going to be underneath. So there's a lot of in between on there too. And that's the stuff that drives me crazy. That's the stuff that you got to keep crossing things out and add, and, and I'm like, if it's working, just don't try to fix it. Just let it keep going.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, some people talk about buying a card and putting it away. You literally put it away in a safe and like a lock, and let it hibernate for a while. But I think I'm trying to follow in your footsteps with that, picking up. I've literally had it locked in my brain, big brain, about, what months do I want to start picking up football? And you talked about this on your podcast, like, March, April, May, start picking up the quarterbacks to, and then by the time the season's about to start, the national time. So I'm curious, Ken, what percentage of comps, because when you get, you walk up, and I know it's an inexact science, but when you're like putting 15 cards together and you say, here's this Kelsey Gold out of 10, here's this numbered Mahomes, you're definitely, clearly a Chiefs fan. So good luck on Sunday. But what percentage of comps will you try to get to make it make sense for you to buy, 15 of 20 or 20 of these cards that, let's say you buy them and then you sell them for a decent deal in the value bin?
Yeah, if they're 15 or 20 cards, I'm getting them at 50. What their value is, I'm getting them at 50%.
Wow,
maybe,
really?
Yeah. And dealers are happy to do that. They're happy to sell those things because for everybody, for most people, they're just trying to pay for the day. They're trying to pay for their table. They're trying to pay for, and a lot of dealers I talk to, they love to rip wax. You go to these and you see people behind the table ripping wax. They're sitting with their kids, all right? They're ripping wax out, and they're like, "Oh, this is a great card. Put it in a thing and throw it up on the table. We'll sell it and we'll earn some more money and we'll go buy some more wax," type of thing. So I come up and if you're buying one card or two cards, you're paying all of what the card's worth, because they're going to say, "Oh, look." Hold the phone up and say, "Hey, look, the last 3 sold at 60, you want to give me 50, that's fine," like that type of thing. But if I've got 15, 20, 25 cards at a busy show and I go through and I say, "Hey, you do like $60 for all these or $50 for all those," 9 out of 10 times they'll look through them and say yes, or they'll say, they'll come back $10 more or $15 more. And I'm fine with that. Because I know these are cards that I can go put on my table and sell and not getting rich on it, right? But it's just keep turning the cases over and the boxes over so it's fresh inventory. Because that's really, at the end of the day, if you're setting up as much as I am, you need fresh inventory. Because if somebody comes up, there were times early on when I was setting up and people would come up and they would look in the case and they'd be like, they look at me and they'd be like, "Oh, you were at Laz's show last week, right?" I'd be like, "Yeah." How did they know? They looked at my case and they saw the same cards. Then they just walked away, right? And then I'm like, well, that's no good, right? So that just taught me something there, right? So try to keep turning that case as much as possible and hope that people feel like you're talking about Jeff, that they feel about me. Like he always has something cool in his case and he's easy to deal with. I mean, those are the most important things you want, the attributes you want being a dealer to show. You want people to think that about you.
Yeah.
Amen. And it goes back to, again, the theme of the episode, traveling. The more you travel, you meet different people, you see that they're honest and have integrity. They see that about you, and then boom, connections are formed.
Yeah, totally true.
I got to get to a West Coast show.
You'd probably really like Burbank. So I set up there. I mean, like we've talked about.
I'm a Southern California guy. I like.
Yeah.
I like.
I mean, you mentioned the beach. You're just going from Long Island to Long Beach.
See,
it's not in Burbank anymore. That's in Ontario, right? Ontario, California.
Yeah. It's at the when I went, I think it was the Ontario Convention Center.
Yeah.
So
a lot of people, I was going to say, a lot of people that I know that are going there have tables that I was always trying to get into that show, trying to get some space at that show. And now all of a sudden people are like, "Oh, so-and-so's got a table, so this guy's got a half a table, and that, so now it seems like for whatever reason, people have space available now. So I think it's going to be easier moving forward just to get space at that show. But I know from East Coast to West Coast, to land in Ontario, California is very expensive. Because I looked up flights. It was like almost $800 for me to fly from Connecticut to land in Ontario. But
Yep.
if I landed in Vegas or I landed in another California airport, it was, I don't know what is so expensive about that area, but it's
just those regional airports, Ken. It's like I was coming from Medford, but thankfully I was in Southern Oregon, right there on the West Coast. So I would go, I don't know if it was a direct to Ontario or if it was Medford to San Francisco to Ontario, but I mean, I think I was able to fly into there, but that's a couple $100 compared to, like you said, going all the way from New York to whatever, bigger airport and then going to Ontario probably. I mean, that makes a big difference.
It takes a lot out of you for a weekend show. Like a local weekend show takes a lot out of me. I couldn't imagine, just going to the West Coast just for a show, flying there and flying back. I would need 2 days to recover from that, I think.
Yeah, a 3-hour time difference each way too. By the time you get adjusted to one, you go back to the other one. Yeah. But I liked what you said about, getting stuff at 50% of comps, when you buy a big bulk deal from another dealer or somebody like that. They could get card fatigue also, and you could have more patience. One of our previous episodes, the payoff of patience, and you're like, this card is cool to me. I'm a Chiefs fan or whatever reason, it's a WNBA player like you also pick up and have pop culture. This is a Britney Spears card, like the one that you sold at Culture Collision. And so you might pick up those cards that other people think is trash, and to you it's treasure to buy it at 50%. Like if I have to wait to get 80% comps on this, for a couple months or, worst case scenario, then you're fine keeping it and you're in it so cheap where it doesn't really go wrong for you. And I even experienced that to a lesser extent when I went up to one of the tables at Culture Collision and I picked up like 5 different cards for probably 70% of comps, but it was stuff that I liked, like this 1-of-1 Caddyshack auto, this Billy Crystal auto. I got a Charlie Sheen also. I got another card. And then, this was the one that the guy really wanted to get rid of, this Bobby Portis, National Treasures RPA. Now he's a NBA champ, Bobby Portis.
Once a Nick, always a Nick.
On the Milwaukee Bucks, and a Nick legend, as you mentioned, when I picked it up. But Ken, this guy couldn't sell this fast enough, for like a decent price. I mean, so like you said, it could be some of that.
The beautiful thing about it is, and you talked about some of the cards that I had, and you used the correct word. You said they're like, you think it's a treasure and somebody else thinks it's trash. And that's the beautiful part. That's the beautiful thing about that. It is a treasure to me. And I don't care. I'll keep the card. If the card gets stale in my case, I take it out and put it on the shelf, and I'll leave it on the shelf for 6 months. And I hope Britney comes out with a new song or somebody else does something else, right? And then I'll pull it back out again. But if not, I mean, I bought a Lady Gaga card that I absolutely love, and I carry it around. Why do I put it in my case? It's overpriced in my case. I put it in my case because I'm hoping somebody else will come up and be like, oh, I have this Lady Gaga card, and they'll show it to me, right? Yep. When I go to these big shows, I bring my Mike Tysons. I mean, you saw everybody was like, oh my God, look, these Mike Tysons are beautiful. Now, this show, nobody came up to my table and said, look at my Mike Tyson, or I have this Mike Tyson for sale. But at the National, I saw so many Mike Tysons at the National just by having those in my case. So yeah, they are my treasures. And if you really want them and you're a real collector, we can make a deal, you can buy them. But if you think they're trash, I'm happy to hold on to them, and it's funny because you see, if you do this enough, people walk up and they look in your, they're like, oh my God. And you think they're looking at your Mahomes or, like your high end card, and it's a Britney Spears, like, and they're like, they think it's the greatest thing they've seen. Right. And then you're like, all right, there's my people.
Yeah.
Ken, you had a Jersey Shore card in your value box that somebody really liked, and they wanted to gift to someone, and they were very excited about it. I remember I was trying to middleman it for you, but this guy wasn't willing to come down on it.
No, well, he made a very low ball offer, and I think the card. I don't know what the pop. It's a very low because the card is only numbered to 76. The boxes are from 2011, and the card is pretty rare and especially Jersey Shore. They're still making seasons on TV.
Crazy,
right?
Crazy that's happening.
And he wanted to pay me like $40 for the card that I graded. Right, that was like, and I'm like, you know what? I'd rather keep the card than the $40.
Yeah, there's a threshold where you'd rather keep it than sure. I get it.
Yeah. Not like that basketball card that the guy couldn't sell fast enough, right?
Yeah. Well, Britney Spears and Bobby Portis, different level of popularity, but you know what I'm picturing, Craig? I'm picturing Ken like listening to the radio, and he's like, Britney Spears obviously an established, person, but if she comes out with a new single, and her value starts to rise, I'm picturing Ken, oops, she did it again.
Nice.
No, I'm just kidding. No, but this stuff is great.
With the hand on my ear too. That's
Sorry, that's the big news pose. I messed that up. But no, it's great. It's great to and also our friendship is one of the things that, is something you can't really value about traveling to a show. I mean, get to room together, go eat dinner. It's like a summer camp, with your buddies. And like you said, I love what you do, Ken, though, as a dealer, which I think if anybody's thinking about either traveling to a show to set up or to browse or just setting up at their local show, which is, it's your style of dealing is like a highway. You have the right lane, the slow traffic, the stuff that you're fine keeping, that you don't mind not moving. You have the middle, which is like the medium stuff that might move, but might not. And then you have the fast lane, the ultra modern quarterbacks, that you move in and out. So you got the 3 lanes of the highway while you're being a dealer. Is that something that you think about consciously, or is it just like, I'm kind of collecting, like the Mike Tyson that I sold to you, that became like a collection thing. Is that something you think about as far as I want some slow moving stuff and some fast moving stuff, or does that just happen based on collecting and being a dealer?
It just comes from experience. It comes from saying all I wanted was cases, and if I didn't sell any graded cards, then I didn't make any money for the day. But then I watched the people to the left of me and to the right to me, and some of them had value boxes, and some of them. Then I started seeing what do they have in their case, and let me try that. Let me try emulating, and what works for them, it's not going to work for me. But if I can keep figuring it out and changing it up a little bit, I've gotten to a point where I figured out I know my value. Call them value boxes, but it's the lower end stuff, the stuff that's not in the case, that I can pump those out, and it puts immediate cash in my pocket, right? It pays for the table, pays for lunch, pays for gas, and all that stuff. And then I've got the stuff that it's a little bit more, right? So now I have to do some those are a harder sale. And then you've got stuff that are even harder, that it's more of specialty. That somebody, and we talked about this, like all these people could walk around the show and maybe one person in this whole show would be interested in this specific special card, right? But I still put them in there because I like it. It's part of me. It's part of my history. It's part of what I like to do. And I could have a conversation with somebody over it. And I'm really hoping that somebody will say, I really want that card to finish my set, and I would feel great about it. I'd say, here, I'm happy to sell it to you as a collector, because it's not a card somebody's just going to buy to flip. Or they're going to say, I have one like it. If you want, I'll sell it to you. And now I've got 2 of them.
Right. Yeah. And man, we could talk for forever, probably, with the 3 of us, which I loved our conversations, which we obviously won't share here, but in the hotel room, about the origin of Big Ken.
This guy, Ken. This is what I'm talking about. Ken, you're a G, bro. I said you're the
You're a G, bro.
you're the coolest guy in the room.
I didn't mean to scare you, boys.
Yeah, after that, I made sure his name was capitalized, B and K, every time, we were talking.
Hey, I was listening to the last 2 episodes you guys put out, which are honorable mention, and the people that and Carmine. I was disappointed. What about happened? Our kid? What about our kid from Trade Night with the bleaker hat and the curly hair? sit like the Don
Oh,
sitting on the end of the
that guy.
table.
See, you had more of an experience with the Big Don than I did, because I just kind of heard about him, but tell a story about the Big Don, because he's on he's on your all culture collision first team.
Oh, all culture is your first team. And like and the older you get, it's harder to determine how old people are, right? But how old would you think? Because I'm thinking to myself, he was probably 12 to 15 years old.
I would say 12 or 13, I would say.
Yeah. So he's sitting at trade night. He's got a table on the end, right? And he's got some cards out, but there's a whole line of people. And somebody had said to me that I knew and said, "Oh, that kid over there has got an Anthony Richardson auto, over there." So I wanted to go over. So I'm standing behind him. I'm looking over his shoulder at the cards on the table, looking for this. And there's a line of people. And some guy's like, "There's a line." He tells me there's a line. And I'm like, "What?" He says, "Yeah, we got to get in line." And I'm like, I have no idea what you're saying. Like, why would I go get in line? He goes, "Are you selling him cards?" And I'm like, "No." He's like, "Oh, okay, you're all set." And the kid's like sitting back. He's like, "What you got?" And he's looking. He's like, "What do you want for this?" He goes, "Oh, nah, get." He's like, "Next." I'm like, "Oh my God, this kid's my hero." And we talk about like these kids learning these skills, the negotiation and the people skills and all that, and the value of money and making money. And I'm telling you what, the skills this kid had right there, he's going to be running a big corporation someday. He was waving people off like, get this crap out of here. Like, who's buying that stuff?
It sounds like this kid had hobby henchmen at his side. How was he? What Craig has a lot more questions than answers right now.
Yes. So a 12 to 15-year-old, curly hair, wearing a bleaker hat, just bossing people around, and everyone was just going to him to sell cards. I need to know.
They were bringing the cards up to sell him cards.
So it was an honor to sell this kid cards.
Yeah, Chuck, Big Chuck.
Yes.
Right. You go to the show, Big Chuck. He's always got 4 or 5 people, in waiting to sell him some cards. That's what it reminded me of.
Well,
the same
it sounds
thing.
like this kid's a little more cutthroat. Chuck is more welcoming and warming.
So I said to him, I cut the line.
Look at you.
And
wow.
I said to the kid,
did you get stopped and frisked? I mean, with the security?
Somebody said, "You got an Anthony Richardson auto over here." And he's like, yeah. He pulled it out. As he's handing it to me, he said, "It's way off centered and it looks like shit." I'm like,
what?
Oh, okay. Well, it was so dim in there in that trade night. Like you could hardly see anything to begin with. I kind of looked at the card. I wouldn't even have known it was off center. I mean, I probably would have inspected it at the price he was asking, a little better, but I passed it back to him. I said, "Yeah, I'm probably all set." But I got a chuckle out of it. I mean, I like to see these kids, the entrepreneurs, it's good. It's nice to see. Kind of reminds me of myself as a kid, running paper routes and mowing lawns and, making money.
It's the new age hustle is what it is. You're not shoveling driveways anymore. You're taking out your phone and calculating comps. It's just a little bit of a different era.
Well, you figure the kid's making money, right? He's got to be making money.
Well, he's obviously paying his employees to, keep the line in order. And, So I was curious, speaking of trade night, Ken, because you as a Chiefs fan, at the time when we were at the show, the Ravens were about to play the Chiefs in the conference championship. And now, of course, we know the Chiefs won. But at the time, a lot of people were really thinking the Ravens were going to win, and they had plenty of chances to do it. So you as a Chiefs fan, you picked up that Patrick Mahomes downtown PSA 10. Love that card with the ketchup, which I was shocked that we had to explain to a few people, clearly not Chiefs fans, about how much Patrick Mahomes loves ketchup and why that was featured on a card. Clearly, it was well known. There you go. That's it. Look at that card, Craig, with the ketchup coming out from behind.
Yep. I remember he got
the
it.
The wolf and the Dorito chip.
Super cool. But the move that you made that I was like, wow, at the trade night, which you were saying you made a lot of sales at on your podcast, was the trade that you made for the Tom Brady auto on card. I think was it a 5-star auto?
Yeah. It was the 5 stars, 2014 5-star auto.
And I was like, what did he get? And can you hold that up again? It's the Lamar Jackson rookie ticket contenders auto numbered
to
number to 25 on card auto,
traded.
BGS 9.5 with a 10 auto.
Yep.
Traded, and was it like what, 700 cash from the Brady? That the kid added on. So he added the Jackson rookie ticket auto at a 25 plus like 700, and you gave him the Brady. Yep. Now, you being a Chiefs fan, you made almost like not a prospect-y play per se, because Lamar Jackson probably a 2-time MVP now, but you made a bet on that, and now it didn't pan out as far as the Ravens. But I know you weren't betting, like you were calm as a cucumber, after you made that bet. And I'm like, got the Lamar Jackson. And I'm like, if that was me, I'd be a little stressed. Like, who's going to win tomorrow? My team is the Chiefs, but I just made this bet. So why were you okay taking that on, knowing the risk involved with like a, $3,500 card like that?
Well, the card recently sold, but just before in December, before the playoffs, for like 3,300. I think it was like 3,280, 3,290.
Yeah. So it must have gone up since then with the playoff run.
The card before that sold for like $5,500, right? Okay. So this person who had this card, he came to me and he wanted $5,000 for it. My Brady card had a $5,000, but my Brady card was truly more of a $5,000 card than his, right? I mean, especially with his most recent comp at around 3,000. Now, here's the thing. The Brady card, I bought that, I traded with cash, and I get into that card very good. That was a card I got into that very well. And I got into that card because I'm here in New England, and there's a ton, everybody's a Brady fan here, right? And I figured it would be an easy card to move because there's a lot of big time Brady collectors here. But after I purchased the card, and the big time, it's a lesson learned. They said, you know what? That's a great card and it's worth the money. But I'd rather put the money out into another Brady card than that one. That wouldn't be my go-to. That's not what I would put that money out for. So that card has been in my case now for a few months. People ask me, what are you asking? And there's really no negotiation. There's really no sales on it. The last sale on it was over a year ago for $5,400 or $5,300, something like that. And then when this Lamar Jackson card came, I thought to myself, this would probably be an easier card for me to sell, to move. And not even if I'm not moving it, but even if I wanted to trade down, it would be a card that somebody would want to take this card to Burbank or to Dallas or something like that. Versus the Brady card, which was, you would have to find the right person to buy that card. Where here you do too, but this card I think was just more liquid. This Lamar, rookie was just more of a liquid card. So in my mind, it made sense, and getting cash back on top of it, that was a home run. It was a no-brainer right there.
Yeah, that's a great.
You'll hold that, Lamar.
What's that?
You'll hold that, Lamar, right? I mean, that's just, you'll wait. At some point, there'll be Lamar hype again.
Oh, of course. But if not, I bought the card below the comps that it was at before the playoffs. So if I wanted to, I could move that card very quickly. That was that night after I did it, that kid came right over and he was like, I'll give you $3,000 right now for that card, and I said, no, I'll hold on to that card because I think there's probably a little more room in that. And who at that point, nobody knew what was going to happen the next day in that game and what was going to happen. So I don't mind taking a chance. Yeah.
Right. And it's a calculated chance, like a very, and plus you're getting good value back out of it. I think that's the key too. Like, I loved what you said with it's kind of ironic, but the less established player has the more collectible card in that case. Like, even if you're a Lamar Jackson collector, you're going to rather that rookie ticket, iconic set, the Contenders auto, numbered out of 25 in a great grade BGS 9.5 versus a Tom Brady auto out of a less desirable set, that 5-star. It's not an upper class set. It's still a nice card, still a Brady auto, but it's not as collectible for somebody who's already shelling out, 3, 4, 5,000 to try to keep something in their collection. So even though it's more of a prospect with Lamar Jackson, the card is more collectible versus a Tom Brady all-time great, but less desirable card in itself.
Ken, that's out of 23, the cracked ice, right?
25.
25.
You're talking
Cracked
about
ice.
the Jackson card?
Yes.
No, it's not cracked ice. It's the Contenders.
What's the parallel? Because I'm not that well versed in Contenders football.
It's just numbered out of 25. Does
It's
it have
the
like a color?
Contenders championship ticket.
Championship.
Okay. Yeah, they do it with the tickets. That's right.
Cool.
Yeah. That's great.
So
Anything else, Greg? What else you got?
That's all I got for you. I did want to. I know it went long today, but I did want to plug Bleecker. Speaking of shows and stuff, because they're doing their monthly showcase spectacular every first Sunday of the month from 1 to 8 p.m. So I walked around the West Village today, got some pizza, went to Bleecker, met some friends. So that was fun.
I'm gonna have to meet you down there one Sunday for that.
It's worth it because it's in a good neighborhood, the West Village, and
Yeah.
you got good people set up. Jeff's Cards was set up today. Sharon Black, Jaded Wolf was there. But I had to mention that I ran into Carmine, the podcast listener, Curtis.
Yeah.
Curtis, who's a friend of mine, and we were just chatting. He's got 2 young kids. He lives uptown. He was interested in my son, Mosaic PSA 10. Not my I don't have a son. My Mosaic Hunman's son. He's a Tottenham forward, Gold Mosaic PSA 10. And he was interested in the card, but he referenced today when I saw him, met him for the first time, that he heard me say to you what I was into it for and what I thought I can get for it.
Yeah.
And he wasn't feeling the price. So I shouldn't maybe reveal too much. But I got to shout out Curtis. He was there with his 2 kids, which was great. He gave me a card club donation, a nice 2-row box, and he hooked me up with a gift, this nice Bernard King jersey autograph card.
Shout out to Curtis. That's awesome. That's cool.
He's a listener, so that was a cool interaction. And these are the types of connections you make at Bleecker. That's why I love going there so much.
Yep. Go to shows and go to shops. I think that's 2 things that we established here. Traveling to shows doesn't make sense. I think the takeaway is really it's incalculable, the value. Financial value is one thing. And like you said, Ken, you can't measure the entertainment, the connections, whether it's to get a card or to make a new friend, the experiences in a city that you can't get without traveling, and, strengthening connections you already have in the hobby. And, we talked about listeners with the 2-part recap that we had previously about Culture Collision. I think that was the most feedback I got. And we hardly talked about cards. We more talked about the people. And Craig, that was a great idea for the first team all Culture Collision list to name the 5 people with the most interesting stories. The handshake kid and the non-subscriber were like the 2. It's still funny just to even mention their name, but like that was the most feedback that I've ever gotten on an episode before, with 73 episodes to choose from before this one, because it was so entertaining and it was so fun and it was social situations that you would never be in without it making sense to travel to a card show. So
stories for life.
It's the stories, man, with the cards too. I mean, there's so many great things to pull from that. But what do you think about those people who we met, Ken? There were some zany stories coming out of that.
Yeah, that was. I've been laughing because I was coming in. I was listening to yours in the car, and as I was pulled in the driveway, I was coming in. It was the part where you were laughing because Craig said, the guy refused to pay get a $5 discount to subscribe. And I paused it. I came in, I was laughing, and Sherry's like, "What are you laughing?" I'm like, "You got to hear this." I rolled it back, like 30 seconds, and she was laughing too. Yeah, that was definitely a cool little segment. It was fun. Yeah. But you know what? These are the people you meet at shows. And you can't predict, what everybody hobbies differently. There's some people that come in and walk through that show, never buy a card, don't own a card. They just like to look at cards, right? And then you got all the way up to somebody that comes in and can't walk by a case without buying a card. And then everything in between. So it's you meet all kinds of shows, and they all mean well. They're all part of our hobby, right? And the hobby wouldn't go around without everybody, right? We need everybody to keep it spinning.
Yeah. Human capital. Yeah, we always allude to that. Ken, that's all I got. What's your next show?
I am doing Mohegan. I'm doing the casino shows coming up the end of February. I'm doing Mohegan Sun 2 days, the last Saturday, Sunday in February, and then the following week is Foxwoods Casino. Is the following Saturday, Sunday is the Card Vault show. So those two shows, I may, if it makes sense, I may take my hockey cards to Toronto Expo and move those up there, and then we'll see where it goes. You know what? I was talking to somebody today. I went to a show. I was talking to a dealer about the Nashville show, and I think that may be the next show I might want to travel to. And I think that's pretty close to you, isn't it, Carmine? You could get there.
That's not too far away. I think actually when I was taking the Penske truck out here, we stayed in Nashville. And you know what would be fun, Ken, is if we did go to that, we'd have to incorporate some of the extracurricular experiences. And I drove past, and anybody listening to Nashville knows this, the line of bars that are playing live music with that country row there. I mean, I saw 3 drummers back to back to back, like in the 3 bar restaurants. That would be really something cool. That would be and I would be interested to see what the card selection would be like. It's 5.5 hours, 5.5 hour drive, which isn't impossible, but
yeah. And I think it's like he said today, and I was going to check it. Don't hold me to it, but he said it was 750 tables. So
wow,
that seems like an awful big show to not go to at least once.
Yeah.
True. And maybe even get a table.
Okay. Well, we'll have to talk about that after this one.
Yeah.
But Ken, thanks for hanging out with us here and hanging out with us. More importantly, in real life, hanging out with us. Those are.
I do have to say this, and I appreciate you guys, because you guys know I have kids that are your age, but when I'm hanging out with you guys, you don't make me feel like I'm somebody's father, right? You make me feel like I'm just part of the group, and I truly appreciate that.
Yeah, of course, Ken. And also when you tell us stories about your old days being big, Ken, you put us in line immediately. We know we know that we're the ones in line, and you're the little kid saying next. We know where we stand. But no, that was great. I mean, really, I think we talked a lot about traveling to shows, the cost, and that there is no cost for the value that you get personally. But to have you drop knowledge as somebody who sets up as a dealer so often, I think was really, really cool, and hopefully meaningful and valuable to anybody tuning in.
Right. Until next time, what's your outtake, Ken?
Do I get to go, or do I have to wait till you get to 1 and 0? I see your little fingers going over there.
Oh no, we don't count down. We just do peace. So I was going to let you do the outro.
I'll give you a piece tonight. I could do my outro myself. Peace, guys. I appreciate this.
Peace.
Peace.